Hello, Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for School Live Letters, Chapter 6. When we last left our heroes, we focused on Rise of the Degeneracy Society, how she had kind of followed Aosoi's example and stepped out of the university to go on a mission to kind of go to Randall HQ and kind of access some of their lost research documents. Which was, on the one hand, a sort of exploration of a character who never really got a lot of shine in the original series. As I recall, Rise was one of those characters that I sort of forgot a lot about once we left the university. And also gave us some new information about the zombies. For one thing, that not only does the microbe in Meguri Gauka protect against infection from non-infected people, it also kills the infected. Which is an interesting thing, but it really is just. But the main point is more on Rise starting to break out of her shell a little bit. Also, we learned there's a chance that Randall did not see the Omega virus as a biological weapon, but as something for medical research, which is interesting and also kind of unexplored. So yeah, last time was nice. And so let's jump right on in, and we open on a flashback. I believe this is Aki. Right, I have my cheat sheet for the Degeneracy Society. I hate that name, by the way. I cannot say it for the life of me. But I have that cheat sheet on another tab. So yeah, that is Aki. Back when she was with the Melee Fight Crew. Assuming the Melee Fight Crew's name has not been changed in translation. Because Melee Fight Crew always seem to kind of mesh with Fallen Crew, a name that has since been changed. But anyway, back then, Aki spots Ayaka walk in, along with the boy who I think is the father of Sino's baby, as I recall. But Ayaka sort of like walks in and goes to her desk in a huff, and Aki looks up at her, and Ayaka just sort of looks down, sort of morose, but then grins, kind of stunning Aki. And as that little wiki cheat sheet tells us, originally, Aki abandoned the Melee Fight Crew due to spotting Ayaka smiling at the graveyard. This is not the graveyard, but it does kind of seem to be an echo of that. Anyway, Ayaka sort of notices Aki staring, and Aki kind of hurriedly turns away. And then Aki slams down the, cloth she was holding. She was doing something with what might be a child's shirt, is my first instinct. I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to be. It has an A emblazoned on it. It looks too small. It looks too, thin to be a skirt. So I don't know what it's supposed to be. Either way, she kind of slams it down, and we see she kind of, readies her nerves to say something. I'm guessing this is the moment she leaves the Melee Fight Crew. But I don't know for sure. We also see there the cap-wearing guy. I think that's the one that... Didn't Kurumi end up, summoning zombies to kill him at one point? I forget. It's been a long time since I read the University arc. Anyway, our picture here, our cover photo, is of Aki, Chapter 6, Aki. That day, that moment. Of Aki, I think that's present-day Aki, kind of facing towards the viewer, as Ayaka, upside down, looks away. So we see that sort of contrast between Aki and Ayaka. Anyway, we open on St. Isidora University, and an alarm rings, and Aki sort of stretches as she gets out of bed. She walks over to her closet and gets dressed for the day, goes over to her makeup, and she narrates, "Each and every morning I create myself. A super cute, super strong, totally reliable older sister. I become the person I want to be." This is all over image of her doing her makeup in the morning. "I do it even if the world ended and I were the only one left." I'm curious if this is sort of a something that she told herself before the apocalypse, because she literally lived through the world ending. And I don't think this is a flashback, A, because of the white borders, but B, because of just how run down the building wall looks in that establishing shot. Anyway, I do it even if the world ended and I were the only one left. And after she finishes, Takes a look at herself. It's not for anyone else. I do it for me. And Aki grins. Perfect. And she clicks, I think her lipstick closed. She walks down the hall and runs into Hika. Hika? And Hika looks at her. Hika's also another character I remember very little about. After Rise last time, I'm a little bit refreshed on her thing. But all I really remember about Aki and Hika in particular are the notes on the Fallen Crew wiki page. So yeah, Hika though was not chosen to stay with the melee fight crew due to her inability to kill zombies. Which is again all I really remember about this character. Anyway, maybe one of these days I'll go back and I'll reread Isidore because it's just been a long time. Anyway, we do get a full body shot of Hika there. And Aki looks at her. What's wrong? You seem sad. Oh, canker sore. Oh, have you taken your vitamins? Yeah. Oh. And they just sort of make this really awkward small talk there. It's kind of funny, and just how uncomfortable it is. But the two of them just sort of, awkwardly pause. They very quickly run out of small talk. And then Hika turns to Aki. Are you okay? Me? I was thinking about the Militants. Or really, about Ayaka. Okay, so there's a bit of a translation thing. Is that they're now being called the Militants instead of the melee fight crew. I don't know if Militants is sort of a nickname because they were very militant, or if that was their group title in this new translation. I'm not sure. I won't know. That's a question for Waterflame, I think. Anyway, Aki goes to kind of discuss the flashback we saw. Did I tell you about this before? I saw her staring at the graveyard and smiling. It was so creepy I couldn't handle it and left the Militants. But maybe she was just remembering something funny. Okay, I don't think Aki is right there, given everything we saw of Ayaka back in the university. Which I only remember the sort of broad strokes of her just being sort of crazy and sacrificing herself to the zombies at the end, which led to her confrontation with, I think, Yuri in the climax of the manga. Confrontation such as it was, I should say, with Ayaka already being sort of dead. But anyway, my point is, so Hika's response to that is just a quiet yeah. But I'm skeptical. I think Aki was right the first time, but I think what we're seeing here is kind of, Aki sort of looking back. It's been 3+ years since she made that choice, and it's one of those choices that, definitively shaped the course of her life, and perhaps the course of everyone else in the Militants, and maybe a part of her is wondering, did she choose wrong? Would the Militants be alive today? Had she not been kicked out, had she not left, which they probably would not be alive still. I doubt her inclusion would have done anything, but I can understand why she sort of ponders that question. Anyway, just then Rise pops in. You're talking about Ayaka-kun? And Hika and Aki both sort of reel back in surprise. Huh? Eep! And Aki gets onto her. Don't jump out at people like that. My bad. And she sort of pats Hika on the shoulder, Hika's heart is just pounding there. Ayaka-kun was the queen of the Militants, right? I didn't really know her. And we see the organizational chart we see Ayaka and the blonde boy who Ayaka kills at the end of that arc, whose name I don't quite remember. Also, God, this is like the part in 100 Years Quest when we jump back to Edelus for a while, and I realized how much I was missing in my Edelus knowledge, because it's just been so damn long. It has been so long since I read Isidore. But we see below them is Sino and the sort of scruffy cap guy, and then Sino's boyfriend lover thing at the bottom of the pyramid. Anyway, Ayaka-kun is the queen of the Militants, right? I didn't really know her. And Aki explains, kind of, I guess. She went and died. So unfair. Now I can never ask her. But Rise counters, I think it'd have been more unfair if she'd lived. Lived? Huh? At funerals and stuff, everyone tells stories about the dead. But from the dead's perspective, I'm sure there are all kinds of things they wish they could say. Okay, I'm trying to work out what exactly anyone's point is with all this. Because there is sort of, you know, Aki wants to know. Aki wants to know if she was right about Ayaka. I'm pretty sure she was, but she'll never know because Ayaka is dead. So Aki's thing there makes sense. It's Risei's it'd have been more unfair if she'd lived. Because if she's saying, you know, Ayaka was a terrible person, and, you know, maybe she sort of deserved what she got, that would make sense just with this panel alone. But that doesn't quite track with what Risei says next. At funerals and stuff, everyone tells stories about the dead, but from the dead's perspective, I'm sure there are all kinds of things they wish they could say. And I'm not quite sure how that translates to it'd have been more unfair if she'd lived. I don't know. Might be missing something. And then, so Aki kind of ponders that, and then Risei continues, but the dead can't speak. It's the living who decide what to remember and record. That is unfair. I mean, that sort of is... that. I don't see the argument there. That just... maybe I'm really harping over a really, really minor argument. But that seems to just sort of agree with what Aki was saying. You know, though Aki was saying it's unfair to me that she died, it's more that it's unfair to Ayaka that she died. Which makes sense because she's dead, for one thing. I don't know. Anyway. And so Hika sort of ponders that. Remember and record? And Risei goes into her bag. You know, what fades with time. And what remains. And she pulls out a yearbook from Megarigaoka Private High. We don't know what year it is. And so I don't know if this is meant to be, like, is this the School Life Club's yearbook? I mean, I doubt there was one made for their final year, but, like, from an earlier year? I'm not quite sure. Anyway, we cut to, Aki, Hika, and Risei at the kind of Degeneracy Society. I will never forgive... I guess it was Waterflame who made that translation change, and I will always be mad about that, because I just cannot say Degeneracy Society without, like, prepping for it. Anyway, they're at the table, and Risei brings out the book again, and Aki asks her, is this a graduation album from the School Life Club's high school? Yup. So I was sorting through the material brought back from Megarigaoka High. I thought she might be in here, so I checked it out. Since I heard that Ri-san ran into Ayaka-kun there. Oh, it was Ayaka's graduation yearbook. Because Risei heard that Ayaka had ended up at Megarigaoka High and put together that she was a former student there. Okay. Alright. And Aki asks, and was she? Yup, she was a graduate. May I look? Of course. And Aki turns to open the book and kind of freezes. And Hika presses, what's wrong? Well, it's like we're snooping, you know? I think we'll look inside and find out her high school life was something like this. And we have these images of, like, Ayaka eating lunch alone, and then sort of sitting by the pool alone while all the other girls go to swim, and sort of standing alone during graduation pictures, I think. And then we'll be like, so that's why she turned out the way she did in college. So yeah, Aki sort of got this whole like image of Ayaka already set up in her head. This whole like fake tragic backstory. But either way, Aki continues. It feels a little cruel. Like she'd probably hate that. And Risei takes the book. Even if it is cruel, I'm sure it's fine. Alright, just go for it, Risei. Well, if you put it like that, I am curious. And then she opens the book, and it's burnt. It's pretty badly burnt anyway, so you can't see more than her name. You should have said that earlier. And we see Kamimochi Ayaka. And we can see like part of her face. Her eyes, her like eyes up are kind of gone, but you can see her mouth, her smile, which is not like a big smile. It's kind of a small one. I wouldn't really call attention to it if it weren't for the fact that smiling is such a big part of Aki and Ayaka's sort of history together. But either way, Aki looks at it. Ayaka. So that's how it's written. Her name is written with the characters for Scarlet and Summer, which is, alright, that's interesting. And then we cut to that night. Aki is sitting on her bed with, it looks like a drawstring bag, actually, was the item that she was holding during her confrontation with Ayaka in the flashback. When Ayaka turned, she went back to her high school. I guess that means that, even more than her life in the Militants, that's where her most precious memories lay. Yeah, I mean, that does make... So that would probably be a counter to what Aki was saying earlier, that her high school life was awful. That deep down, that's where she was happiest. If I turned, where would I return to? I hope I'd stay here. Here, Toko and Hika and Rise accept me. I mean, I understand what you're going for there, Aki, but, like, I would not hope that I would, if I turned into a zombie, I would stay with my friends to turn them. But anyway, we flash back to the incident, with Ayaka smiling, and Aki points out, hey, what are you smiling at? And the two of them, oh no, it's a fantasy, where she just kind of confronts Ayaka directly instead of abandoning her. Oh, that's what I should have done. We hear sort of like mock argument going on. Maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe things would have turned out even worse. But I really wish I'd tried. Tomorrow, I need to make myself even stronger. And she falls asleep holding that bag. And that's where the chapter ends. So I really like the resolution of this chapter. I mean, first, I like getting to know characters that I basically had in my own mind kind of become nothing more than background characters. Just getting to kind of see them again, be reacquainted with them, or perhaps acquainted with them for what's basically the first time. People change a lot in 3 years. And yeah. I don't know. I like getting to see Aki sort of linger in her regrets. You know, she feels like she failed Ayaka and perhaps all of the Militants in a way, by sort of abandoning them. And that maybe with her on their side, things could have turned out different. Maybe everyone could have lived. Maybe, you know, given how easily Aki fit into the Degen Society, I need to find an easier name. I'm going with Degen Society for now. But given how easily she fit in with them, maybe she could have brokered a peace between the two groups had she stayed. And in that way, you know, everyone could have survived and lived happily ever after, and not, you know, all the Militants except for Sino dying. But yeah. And then we have Rise, who's kind of sort of, in this instance, not quite an agent of chaos, but definitely kind of like stirring up Aki's feelings, sort of like goading her into learning more about Ayaka, and perhaps that's for the best. It's through confronting her own sort of deep-seated conflict surrounding Ayaka that she can kind of grow beyond her. But that alone doesn't really seem to amount to anything. But the reason I think, but like there's this weird thing here where Rise seems to be pretending, or seems to be acting like it's just happenstance she walked in on them talking about Ayaka. But the fact that she was carrying Ayaka's high school yearbook in her bag is more than a little telling, I think. But anyway, then we come to this last scene. And I really love this last scene. It's one of the best parts of Letters so far, I'd say. Even with a character I don't know that well. It does not reach the highs of the Miki chapter. I'd be highly shocked if anything in this series reaches the Miki chapter, because that's just, you know, an emotional juggernaut right there. But it's that sense of, like, regret. that's what she kind of leaves out on, is that, like, there was another way, and I lost it. And, I have to live with that, and I gotta move on. But I also, have to acknowledge that, yeah, things might not have changed, but they also might have changed. It's not like she says maybe things would have turned out even worse, but for the Militants, it's not like it really could have gotten worse. The only way it could have gotten worse is if Sino had died, given the rest of them all died. But yeah, that's sort of where we leave off with Aki. And so before I call it off, let's talk just like general how much of the series is left y'all think. Because I think, I kind of assumed, basically because I'm sort of don't really focus a lot on anyone besides Toko in the Degen Society when I think about them, that like maybe Rise was like separate enough that she wouldn't really count in having a Degen Society chapter. So we had the Degen Society, we had the Rise chapter, and then we sort of do whatever's next. But now with Aki, who's like one of the main members of that, I think we definitely have the Hika chapter is gonna be next for chapter 7. And then the Degen Society chapter might count as a Toko chapter. We might not have a Toko personal chapter. We might. So that might be another chapter. And then Sino. And then I think at that point it's gonna have to be Yuki. I think they're saving Yuki for last. And then that'll be it. That'll be the final. I don't think it'll go past Yuki. Unless we're gonna go around for like a round 2 of all the letters, which I'd be fine with. The thing about letters is that it's just checking in on characters I really like, or even just like have a passing familiarity with. And I'd be more than happy to just keep on doing that for as long as they're gonna go. So yeah, this is a fun chapter. It's nice to sort of be reintroduced to Aki. I really like her sort of struggle with regret of like what could have been different had she sort of had a more active role in the Militants, had she actually kind of addressed her complaint to Ayaka, actually confronted Ayaka instead of running away. And yeah, it's nice. I've kind of not talked about the makeup scene. And it's not because I'm not quite sure what it's doing here. Like, it doesn't really add on. If the whole focus of the chapter is Aki and her regret about leaving Ayaka alone, I'm not quite sure what this is doing. I mean, the only thing I have for it is this bit about being totally reliable she has on, I don't have page numbers on here, and that could kind of go to her unreliability with the Militants, maybe. But God, I really need to reread Isidore. It's been a really long time since I read that arc. But anyway, the chapter was a lot of fun. And I can't wait till, I think it's only, a month and a half away when chapter 7 will be coming out. Given not counting however much time it needs to get translated. But anyway, that'll be a lot of fun when it's out, and I can't wait for that. So I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe, or, do whatever makes you happy, And remember, your life is your own, okay? Bye!